Hey everybody, Edo here, and I am excited today because I have Jessica along. Say hello, Jessica.
Hello.
And Jessica and I got to meet for the very first time in person, which is incredible after working together for almost 2 years at
Yeah.
GAMA in Reno. And we wanted to have a quick video with some reflections on the show. Very often folks ask, should I go to GAMA? Is GAMA worth it? I always point back to older videos I've done on the topic, but it's nice to get a little bit more of a recap here. It's actually been quite a number of years. I skipped GAMA in 2020.
20?
Wait, we're in 2022, 2021,
Yep.
2022. Was on. But it was like literally like lockdowns were happening or about to happen, and I was just like, I think I'm not going. So I was there the year previous, and I'm a huge fan of GAMA and still am. This was your first, not only your first GAMA, right, Jessica, but your first convention altogether,
Yes.
like big one,
Yes.
industry
We
one.
had like the practice one, the local one, which
Yeah,
was
there was
great. But yeah, this was the first big one.
This is the real deal, which is cool. And we had a booth. So that's also something we'll talk about. But generally speaking, for those who don't know, GAMA, unlike many consumer shows, Gen Con, Origins, Dice Tower, XYZ, is a industry show that's very much focused on retailers. And then they do add publishing relationships and now some more marketing and designer tracks. But really, generally speaking, I think when people think of it, it's the show where you as a publisher get to meet with a wealth of retailers. Now, with COVID and things like that, the number of retailers sort of has been lower in general, but still a pretty big showing this year. I do know in a couple years they're going to be moving to a more central location from Reno. They're still deciding, I think, but I suspect that retailer volume will grow. So that's sort of the premise. And what I would say is to attend, you just have to be a GAMA member, I believe, which is, I think, like a $300 yearly fee. And somebody can tell me about all the GAMA benefits that's not the show, but I think a lot of people look at that $300 as the fee for the show. I mean, there are a lot of benefits to being part of GAMA, but I don't know. That's where that, like, the biggest value of that is that show. And I'm sure if GAMA, you're welcome to add in all the different things that are valuable. You get access to a lot of industry folks. They do various things for the industry. I don't want to discredit it, but anyway. And I would say, I don't recall, Jessica, you might recall, the getting a booth. I want to, a 10 by 10 was $1,000, $1,200. Is that about right?
1,300.
She's like, it was
So
1,300.
go up a little bit higher.
Okay, so but just to like get folks in, two people, 1,300 for the booth. I think hotels are like a couple hundred something a night, flights. I think if we look back at overall expenses on the trip between the two of us, and you're in New York, so that was a longer flight. I'm in California, so that was like $100 flight, or I could have driven, of course. I think we're talking about $3,000, maybe, right? So this is a pretty considerable expense. I mean, it's not as big as a larger convention where 5, 6, 7, 10,000, but you're not doing direct sales.
Yep.
To customers, you are selling to retailers, so you are setting up a lot of deals, but you're not necessarily getting that money at the show. You're setting them up in the future. Okay, so that's sort of buy-in. Now, if you work with PSI or Impressions Flat River and they're a consolidator, oftentimes they have like a larger booth you can be a part of, which Pencil First Games had done in the past. We didn't do it. This was our first full booth. So that's something to consider. And the other thing that's noteworthy about the show, and then we'll start getting deep into the perspectives, is they have a lot. It's a middle of the week show, right? Which is a pretty big deal. The actual show floor days were Wednesday and Thursday, but on Monday and Tuesday there were a number of sort of what do you call them, like speeches and seminars, right? They have different tracks. I think there's a retailer track and a designer track and a publisher track and a variety of marketing shows. They had a marketing roundtable this year on certain days, and then they also have like a regular game hall, game night thing for showing off new games, schmoozing, all that stuff. Obviously, or not so obvious, you're in a casino. Gambling's legal in Reno, which wouldn't be too, right? I guess middle America. I don't know, maybe it is, but you're in effectively like a casino hotel, right? So you have lots of different eateries and things like that. And it feels fancy schmancy hotel. I mean, I don't know. It feels like Vegas hotel, whatever we want to define that as. So I've been talking, but Jessica, totally fresh eyes from your perspective heading into the show. What were your thoughts?
I was excited to go. I really wasn't sure what to expect. I knew it was you'll get to talk to retailers and a few other, lots of people in the industry, but I was like, all right, let's go and see how it goes. But it was great. I think it's really important to meet people in person, and that's something that we haven't had for, a good 2 years. But even taking that out of account, just being able to talk with retailers and understand, some of the things that are going on in the stores, how our products fit in, and being able to just talk games and find out that, this is an industry where everybody loves it. This isn't I'm just, there was nobody that came to our booth that was just I want to buy a product. How much does it cost? It was oh, that's really cool. I know your games. I play them myself. So just being able to talk with people, understand some of those perspectives again, because a lot of what I do has just been through email, and you don't really get that. You don't really get to chat.
This was also the show where as many people came up to our booth knowing me or asking for me as they were asking for Jessica, which is its own fun and interesting thing. I think you hit the nail on the head, and this is what the biggest difference is from almost all other shows for people who do cons and are thinking about this one from a publisher perspective, is there's no consumers, right? I mean, maybe some folks, but you're not selling, you're not dealing with some people were running demos for games that they were just released, but it's not demo booths, demo tables, running, selling, cashing out, it's just not that kind of craziness. And it's really nice not to have to deal with any of that. I think many publishers have a relationship with a retailer in their vicinity. So I think you get to talk to a retailer or two, generally speaking, depending on what market you're in, if you're a publisher and you get out. But I think it's pretty rare, unless you're decided to do a cross-country trip, for publishers to talk to many game store owners and a diversity of game store owners. And I think that's really stand at hands down why GAMA is awesome, right? Understanding the game store owners and the retailers and distributors and other things. But but we talk to distributors a little bit more on a regular basis. I think getting one-on-one time and just group time with retailers lets you know their perspectives, what's working, what isn't, how their stores are doing. You're building a relationship. You hear about your game in the context of a retail store sales. You'll get feedback on price point. You'll get feedback on box size. You'll get feedback on what worked, what didn't. You'll certainly get feedback if they bought a bunch of your game and it didn't go, or you get feedback that they did. And it just really, it's just great. And they're I think what Jessica is saying, I mean, I think you get a certain type of fandom at conventions, consumer conventions, but I think it's really cool and interesting to see all of the folks that drive that retailer side of the business. They have relationships with customers already, relationship with your product. I mean, I think it's great. I think in and of itself, that is worth the price of admission.
Yeah.
And maybe you could do that without a booth. I think the booth helps a whole lot.
Yeah.
But even at that cost, if you're just saying that kind of volume of handshaking, talking, even with all the COVID masks and all that stuff, I thought was really, really stand out for people to consider for the show. And obviously, again, Jessica got to meet a lot of folks that, she'd been emailing with.
Yep.
You even on, hit of the show, Jessica has meeting all these folks, doing the thing, and then on Friday you then went to you went to the Glass Diet? What's the name of the?
Yep.
Went on site to a retailer in Reno. That was fantastic.
It was cool. Oh, and on the subject of retailers too, it's not just board game store. You get to know how these store owners, how their stores differ, and it's there's board game stores, there's toy stores, there's board game cafes, there's a lot of different types that are out there, and just being able to get that perspective was really cool.
People opening new stores and new locations. I mean, which is awesome. And amazing. One who's opening somewhat near me in a relatively expensive place, and I was like, "Geez, seems like you're going to have a rough time." So that's a big part of it. I think the next thing you do have an opportunity, depending on where you are, is talking with distributors and talking with consolidators, depending on where you are as a company. It's a big deal. The next interesting thing so everything I want to talk about marketing and media last, because, or in a few, because that's like a new angle for this, which I want to talk about. But like an angle that's always been there is it's also a great opportunity, and there weren't as many this year, but it's a great opportunity to really talk with other folks in the industry, talk to peers and other publishers. Everyone is around. It's generally mellow. No one's really worried about their you just don't have that customer craziness, and so there's lots of time to chat, stop by other, if you have two people working your booth, walk around, catch up with other publishers. There are lots of places to sit and chat between. It really is conducive to that dynamic. Now, historically, the coolest, most happy thing about GAMA for me was that the show floor times were very limited. It was like, I think 1 to 5 or 1 to 6 was like how it was, which is great. If you're going to stay up late, hanging out with folks, talking with folks, you do that. You sleep in, have some breakfast. And that was the Wednesday was that, but then on Thursday they changed it to like a 9 a.m. to 6, which was awful. Not awful, because I still like the show, but like I didn't. Over time, I came to understand they wanted to like have it so retailers could come in the morning and then catch flights. But I would have just been like, cool, just make it shorter. Just start at 9 and end at 1. It was a long time, and in particular, I like that balance of booth time, which showing your product off and doing that, and schmooze, hang out more in person time. And I could have just. I did at times, just like had Jessica be like, man, hang out the booth. I'm going to go talk with folks.
Yeah, I'll be back in a little bit, 45 minutes later.
Hey, some chats go on. Hey, not to say, Jessica also took off. She's like, I've got like this party tonight I'm going to. I'll see you. So I think that's that was too bad. But I do think it's a big deal. Now, and this was true for Jessica, but I don't typically go for those first couple days either. So this was a very limited time frame trip. I basically Jessica arrived Tuesday night. I arrived Wednesday morning and just did Wednesday, Thursday, and I was out. Jessica stayed that extra day and went on a road trip. But I will say it's hard to do. I mean, if you're not 100% in the hobby or in the industry, like me, and you have a full-time job, and this is your jobby, taking a full week in the middle of, like without any weekends is like expensive vacation time in DTO. So for me, I keep it limited, which I'm very comfortable with. But it does mean that I don't have a ton of perspective on those first 2 days. I have heard folks who think it's really valuable. I do know folks who like go Sunday to Sunday and they're like bored out of their mind by the end. So I think there's a little bit of a range there. Why don't we talk, again, setting marketing aside for a second, why don't we talk about some of the other not distributor, not retailer folks we see? You got many cards and have done a lot of follow-up, Jessica. How would you categorize the other folks at the show?
We had a couple of manufacturers that came by to talk with us, which that was cool. Just learning more about that.
Yeah. So manufacturers are going to come by. They're typically talking about their different products, their facilities, trying to get you to come along. I think Longpack had a booth, and one other one starts with an M did as well. But there's always a few more. I would say, because I had like prepped Jessica in advance based on my historic experience, this was way lighter on I think overall travel and international travel's down, but like 3 years ago, it was like, I felt like every 3 retailers, there was a new manufacturer saying like, hey, check out my new stuff. Check out my see-through cards. Check out this, check out that. That was definitely there, but I would say it's lighter as overall attendance was lighter. Okay, so you're going to manufacturers and also like sort of like niche manufacturers. Like one guy, I don't remember the name of the company, but he's like, we make gilded mega stretch goals, $50,000 editions of your games, whatever that company was called. And another one who's like, if you need a 10-foot monster, standee that's like looks like it was made for Disney parks. We're gonna do that for you. So there's a couple of that sort of like, I don't know which publisher sitting on an extra $50,000, but there's those crowds. It's out there. Okay, so you had those. Who else, Jessica?
We also had not a lot. I think we figured there might have been a few more, but there were a few like localization partners or people looking to localize games in other languages or regions. So we got to talk to some, in that way.
And this was another group where I actually think this is a big value add for going to the convention in particular. And I thought this was way like even lighter than manufacturers. And I think again, flights out, international flights, we're having fewer and fewer right now. But historically speaking, it was a great opportunity to meet with any localization partners you already had and then find new ones. And usually, sometimes it's the direct company. Sometimes it's like a rep who's, based in the States working around and getting your game. But a number of my initial localization deals historically stemmed from GAMA. And you still saw that. It was less, I don't know if it picks up or doesn't in the future. But that was a big part of it for sure. And it's just great opportunity. And we saw a couple we did who we work with came around and got to meet people we've been doing business with, digitally in person and maybe get another deal signed. So, that makes me very happy.
Yes.
Who else?
I think there were a couple of like fulfillment companies for Kickstarters or just out there, just getting those there. Trying to think what else in the miscellaneous section that.
Well, I think other publishers, the other everyone else at the convention, having dead time at their booth or whatever, walking around and doing laps, was certainly cool. I think, and I found it was a pretty the number of like Asmodee, I think backed out, a number of other bigger ones. So there weren't that many really big. Booths or like focal points, and then as you were walking sort of roll by, for those who, this is like, it's a convention hall, I don't know, I want to say it's a total of 100 booths. Is that too much, too little?
I don't know, but that's what it felt like.
Maybe it's like, I'm trying to think of a convention where there'd be a comparative, like Gen Con sort of is really big. I don't know, it's like 8 rows, each of which was like far enough that you could see the end to end. Maybe I'm really not good at this, but 8 rows of 100 feet, 200 feet. But in a row you would pass by, let's say 20. So I'm going to lower my number, right? Like more, well, I don't know, 100, 140 booths, but maybe 50, 16 per row, something like that. And so, it's a pretty quick walk. I think you can go, if you were just like walking and zigzagging, it's like half the supermarket. Like, I don't know. It's not that big. And I guess people live in different places.
I know. What supermarket you're shopping at?
But so, looking at the folks who were there, lots of small publishers, many pre-Kickstarter, many, one Kickstarter type publishers. And not necessarily anyone doing big booths. So, everyone was mostly in 10 by 10s unless they were at the front, and that was like Impressions or PSI, whoever that one to the left was. So
Games Workshop up there,
Games Workshop.
The big ones,
Yeah, so that was about it. And so you get to see lots of little things. I do, it doesn't have the small like buy little tchotchkes either. So there's not much you can bring home from this trip either, other than deals. But so lots of like, for me, who is active in the Kickstarter space and paying attention, I would say more companies I hadn't heard of than I had, like or like heard of, like, I saw that game, but like never met before. So I felt like there's a pretty big shift. I think it's just a reflection of 3 years, right? I think over the last 3 years, some have gone up, some have gone down. Yes. Definitely international presence was lower, though. A number of Canadian studios were there, and I think Lucky Duck Games had a big presence. So something that was pretty notably different which has occurred over this period of time, which is previously backing up there. You had not that much marketing at all, but the ones who were there were like sort of, you had like a big dice tower area for a while, and then I think, if I recall, there was a little thing that happened, and then they weren't as much of a part of it anymore. Some drama years past, I don't remember exactly, but Board Game Geek had like setups where you could do demos and stuff, like really had areas that for running stuff that wasn't happening. And some of the bigger media of the time, but not you didn't have a lot of social media, you didn't have a lot of smaller content. It wasn't really a media show. They were just, if you were big enough and sort of really ingratiated, is that the right word, like if really in the industry, that there were some folks there. That was really a shift coming back now. Like coming back now, there was like the media events and just way more, like whether it's TikTok or Twitter or Instagram or smaller YouTube channels, like just not as much as you'd have at like a Gen Con or like a major convention, but for this show, it had a very sort of, I want to use the word young, but I don't mean young. Not all of these folks are young, but like sort of new style of not new either, but like more modern, maybe is the way I want to say it.
The modern crowd.
Modern crowd in media coming around and doing stuff and meeting with folks. And that was interesting because these are also folks that at a consumer show, you can't even like get to know or talk to. They're just like slammed doing their walks around. Right. And, so I thought it was a pretty neat new part of it. I'd be interested to see that sort of grow and develop in the coming years. But I thought that was interesting. And I don't know if it ended up being needle moving content because it was fairly limited, but I thought it was great. I could see a lot of folks maybe using GAMA in the future to do sort of new product announcements in a light way, but not necessarily like, here we're selling it sort of ways. But what were some other observations you had, Jessica?
The media stuff was really cool. Just having that there. That was one of the things that was on one of those first 2 days, was like speed networking or like speed dating between media and publishers, which I heard went really well. There's a cool media party, which apparently, media only. I wasn't invited.
Those are events I could get invited to, but I'm not.
I think it was really great to actually be able to meet people, and talking about just publishers too, being able to talk to people who are in, not just the publishers, the publisher people like you, Ed, but like, people who are in sales and in retail, and being able to talk and kind of compare notes a little bit and just get to know them a little bit more.
Oh, your peers. Who are working those? No, it was great. It was great. No, I completely agree. I think that was a very strong presence, and I think again, just to make it specific to this year, like I think there was a lot of energy with people seeing each other for the first time. I mean, it's crazy the amount that folks have changed, whether it's their hair or this or that. Maybe their weights fluctuated in one direction or another, and with the masks, like at first you're like, do I know anybody here? And then like you start getting, I remember you, and I remember you, and really great to catch up and see folks. I mean, I'm wearing the Thunderworks shirt today, but I got to see Keith, who I haven't seen non-digitally in probably just as long. And so that I thought was neat. And for us, we get to spend time with our partners at Impressions and Flat River. We get to see our distributors. That's important face time that you do not get very often. I think to pull it all back, if you are a publisher of really any scale and you're really getting into the industry, and I think getting to GAMA is worthwhile. I think that if you just do it as a member, there's lots of stuff that you can do and participate in. I do think a booth is valuable, though I will note that a booth is valuable if you intend to or have a track into retail. I think if you were like, if that was like, we're going to just be Amazon only, we're just like direct to consumer, or we're just going to do the Kickstarter, we're not actually participating in this stuff, I definitely would not do a booth. There's like no reason to do a booth because that predominant people coming by are retailers, and like it would be like super awkward to be like, oh no, we're not going retail. Like, what are you doing here? I think that's a part of it. And so I think that for a publisher in that space, it's worthwhile. The booth, you know, there's certainly different publishers that went all in, but I mean, Leader Games was there, right? And you know, they had a new game, which is awesome. Yeah. But they just had like one banner and a little table. Like, I think background banner plus like either whether they're a couple small ones or one big one, background banner plus like a copy or two of your key games really is enough. Certain publishers were doing more elaborate setups, you know, had retailer specials. You can do like specials for the show. They had giveaways. I mean, it scales up, but it doesn't scale anywhere towards like we need to ship in product for a consumer event, which I think also is appealing. And
one other thing I will say is, as somebody who is like brand new to conventions and everything, everyone said this is the greatest one to start with because it's very relaxed, it's very low key. There's not a lot of, there's a lot of energy, but it's not like go, got to sell this and demo this and keep going and going. It's more of a laid back, just talking with people that you probably have potentially met before through email or digitally, and then just, meeting them and chatting a little bit. So that was great.
The thing I'm still not convinced on, which comes up a bunch, is, hey, I'm a designer. Should I attend? I think it's tough. On one hand, if you do attend, I think you're going to be there's a limited number of you. So it makes you look special. But I think positive is publishers have time. They're hanging out. They're not like slammed in all directions. So their willingness to play a game, check out what you got, I think works. I think it's quiet. Like all those things are positive. You're not going to have as much serendipity and introductions, and like it doesn't quite have the same energy of a smaller actual convention or a bigger game convention. I don't know. I think you could definitely have a meeting or two, but it would be, for me, I would think of that as like an established designer who can like get conversations going and is comfortable a little bit more without a pack with them. I think could work, but you definitely, we saw a couple stop by. I mean, Pencil First Games isn't picking up a lot of titles, but we saw a couple stop by. Saw a few folks around, but definitely wasn't like a ton of designers or artists, graphic designers. Like I think this was really focused around retail and publishing. Cool. Well, that's reflections on GAMA 2022.
Yep.
I think we'll for sure be checking it out next year as well, while it's still in Reno, and then we can figure out at the middle America trip. But yeah, cool. Well, thanks so much for being on, and it was super. I will say it was super cool to like see Jessica doing her thing and people coming around and like. It wasn't. It really speaks to what you were saying before of like folks, the retailer facing, the sales facing folk getting time together, which I think is cool.
Yeah, definitely.
Okay, awesome. Thanks so much. Bye. Hey everybody, Edo here, and thanks for watching Gaming with Edo. Reviews over here on this playlist. League and Insider videos over here on this one. Subscribe, share, all that good stuff. But most importantly, play some great games. Thanks. Bye.